welcome back.
Ron Apple's episode 2. We're really excited to be here today. Last week we discussed teacher identities in the classroom, specifically how our identities influence our teaching. Today we're going to be discussing school safety, specifically how schools and school buildings can keep our students safe and teachers safe.
Exactly. So I think that this topic is a very interesting topic to talk about right now, but also very appropriate considering the times that we're in. Just event after event has happened in the school setting. We already know that Parkland happened, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
1 year? Last year?
No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago. 2 years ago. It's all running together.
Because there's so many. It's
right.
like every day it feels like there's another school shooting.
Right. And then earlier this year, not even earlier this year, like a few weeks ago, California experienced the same type of event. And I think that what the biggest problem is that we talk about these issues that happen in our white counterpart schools, right?
Yeah.
But we don't really talk about the things that are happening within our communities, within our minority communities, within schools like the ones that we teach at Carroll City High School, right? But the conversation still needs to take place to occur. So today, we're like Miss Walsh, Maggie, Swaggy, said we're going to really try to tackle some of these issues. So let's jump right in.
Awesome. So the first thing we want to talk about is why do we need to talk about school safety? So I have some statistics here from the National Center of Education Statistics. Something that stood out to me is in the 2015-16 school year, the percentage of public schools that recorded incidents of violent crime, serious crime, theft, and other instances, 90% of high schools reported these serious crimes, which I thought was incredible because that's just like most high schools have this crime in them. And it's not just high school that has crimes. It went all the way down to elementary school that is having these violent crimes. In addition, it's students, but also 10% of public school teachers reported being threatened or assaulted by students during the school year.
Right. So let's back up, right? Before we jump, because the statistics are there.
Yeah.
Let's back up. One issue that I really want to bring up is the fact that the protocols that we have, what's the point, right? If we are told that code red lockdowns happen when there is an immediate threat in the building, yet the code red is not called when there is an immediate threat in the building, what's the point?
So you're talking specifically about what happened at our school.
Right. So let's give you a little bit of background information. First of all, there is an op-ed that was written. It is on Blavity. We will drop the link at the bottom of the video, and you can see it on my Instagram account, Ms. Walsh's Instagram account. It's just hit us up and we can send it to you. But I guess for a little bit of backstory, you can jump into it.
Yeah, so in October, a student entered our school with a gun, and we were not put on a code red, and instead we were told, the security was told for teachers not to leave and students not to leave in the halls, but it was never official lockdown, and teachers were told to search for this gun.
And it wasn't that the security told us not to leave, because no security guard came in my classroom, I don't know about yours, but there was an email that was sent out essentially just saying that don't let any student leave, and if you see a student that fits a specific description, respond to the email. So as teachers, we know all the time, sometimes we might be calling out a student via email because they might have been skipping class, or they might have been smoking weed in the bathroom, or they might have been in trouble for a different reason, right? But the problem is that the teachers were asked to identify a student, right, who fit a specific description, but neglected to tell the teachers via email from the administration that there was a risk within the building. And that's a huge problem because do you wear your bulletproof vest when you come to work in the morning?
No, I left it at home.
Oh, I don't even have one.
Yeah.
She left hers at home. I don't have one. Yet there are people with bulletproof vests in the building.
Well, I think that also just it bolsters this expectation that in this time where mass shootings are common in our country, teachers are supposed to be police officers, and we're considered the front line in our schools. But why are we using these wartime analogies in a school? Like, the fact that we're using this rhetoric while we're teaching is in itself dangerous because we're normalizing this violence.
Right. And I think that is also a problem because once there was an issue within the building, we were essentially told, oh, it was under control. We were able to find the kid, like everything is all peachy and the situation was resolved. But we didn't find out until the next morning on the news that the situation was not resolved. In fact, there was a recording of the police dispatch that essentially was saying that the student had pretty much escaped campus, was running down the street, and at that point, even though the threat is no longer inside of the school, the threat is now within the community, which is a lockdown for that, right?
Yes.
Call yellow. So why is it that after Parkland, right, which is not even 20 miles away from Miami-Carroll City Senior High School, right, why is it that after Sandy Hook, why is it that during a time period where gun violence is so prevalent within our communities that we didn't think that it was appropriate? And I'm not really at this point saying, oh, but this person is more at fault than this person, and this person is more at fault than this person. At the end of the day, my students deserve to make it home at night or after school. My colleagues deserve to make it home after school as well. And if the same incident, if I'm not mistaken, happened at Stranahan High School. It's a school in Broward County. And there was a tip, essentially, that there was a gun within the school. They put the school on code red lockdown. That's right up the streets in Broward. And guess what? There was no gun.
Yeah.
So they put the school on the lockdown because of the potential threat. Why not here?
I think it's because we normalize this kind of violence, and we normalize the expectation that there's a gun in school, that we think, oh, we can handle it. And because we have had code reds in which there was guns. Mm-hmm. And so because we feel like, oh, we can just handle it, then we don't go through the normal protocols.
Right. And I think, but define protocol. Look. Hey Siri, define protocol.
It's not working.
She said 1 second. Because the point...
The official procedure or system of rules governing affairs of state or diplomatic occasions. Do you want to hear the next one?
The official procedure or systems of rules of government. They're official rules. Official, as in not suggestions. It's a rule. A rule and a suggestion is not the same thing. So if this is what we should be following, I don't care who calls it or who doesn't call it. The most important thing is that my students make it home, I make it home, the administration makes it home, and the protocol is not a suggestion. Also, I mean, to be honest with you, why do you keep interrupting my instruction time for practice drills when you're not going to call it when the real thing happens?
Yeah, I totally understand. I think I agree with you because it is dangerous and it's scary, and it's thinking, well, these protocols were made to keep us safe. Mm-hmm. And that is how we want it. We want it in the case of emergency. We keep on practicing, so God forbid there is never an active shooter. And it makes me think, are we only practicing it if these scenarios that happen in Sandy Hook, that we have a mass murder, right? We have somebody with an AK-47 coming in. Are those the only times we call a code red, or is it up for interpretation? Why are we only calling in these, why are we only practicing for these scenarios if they're not going to be applied?
And the thing that really, I guess, aggravates me the most, is the best term, is that when we call a code red lockdown, number one, let's back up. A teacher who has no way of protecting themselves should not be responsible for searching for an individual with a gun. That just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
Now, myself and Ms. Walsh, we both, we have been grappling with the idea of teachers having guns and is it right?
It's not.
But my question is, if you know that the teacher does not have protection, what happens if the situation went left and the student started saying, you looking at me a little bit too much. I feel some type of way. And then the gun comes out in the classroom. Then what?
I think that's also just this idea of you're expecting teachers to act like police officers and search, yet if a police officer went into a scenario and was not told that the suspect was potentially armed, there would be outrage. Police officers are expected to know every situation, and to say that we shouldn't because it's best for us not to know is patronizing.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And I also think that it's just to add on to the conversation, right? A lot of the teachers didn't receive the email.
Yeah.
A lot of the teachers didn't hear the announcement because of the PA system, right? A lot of the teachers didn't hear the PA. So we would be having a very different conversation if somebody got hurt, right? And I think that the issue is that people get so agitated when conversations start to happen because it makes you uncomfortable, or because, you want to make sure that you're saving face, right? However, what if one inkling, one small portion of that situation or that scenario shifted a little bit? Then what? What if the gun hit the ground? Because the gun did hit the ground, right?
Yeah.
What if the safety was not on and someone got shot? Then what type of conversation would we be having right now? Right?
We'd be mourning. And we'd be figuring out what we could do better. But the fact that because
we're reactive.
Yes, and because no one got hurt, thank God, we act like we don't have to reflect on the scenario.
But also, I'm going to throw a wrench in the conversation. Would this have happened at Parkland? Would this have happened at any affluent school, right? These conversations...
majority white school.
Right, well, affluent, I guess.
Yeah.
We can put the...
Are they interchangeable on your one?
Low-key, right?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
But this would not have been happening, in my opinion, right? You can agree. It's a podcast, right? We're sitting here saying our opinions. Yes. If you don't agree, drop it down in the comments below. But I don't think that this would have happened, right? And we all can agree that there is an issue at hand. But how are we resolving those issues? How are we fixing it? What are we doing to make sure that our students are safe and that our teachers are safe?
And it doesn't matter what zip code you are in order to be protected. And we should be taking the same precautions as we would in Parkland than we would at our school. And that's what's frustrating, is that I think both of us agree that the same precautions aren't being taken.
And I want to just peel back one more layer. A lot of the times, code red lockdowns happen at the exact same time during a classroom, during when the students are in the classroom,
before lunch,
before lunch, right? Or during the 8th period at the end of the day. However, instances of tragedy don't have a time frame.
No,
right? Instances of tragedy are not timed out to be convenient for the individuals who are responding to that situation. So why is it that code red lockdowns are not happening at 7:20 in the morning as soon as the kids get to school? Why is it not happening when classes are changing, right? Between the class period.
Really the optimal time. Like that's the thing, is we're not testing in these scenarios.
Why is the code red lockdown not happening at 2:20 when the bell rings, when school is technically dismissed? Right? If someone really wanted something to happen in the school, God forbid, but don't you think that they would be paying attention? Our kids aren't stupid.
No, they're not.
Right.
And that's what happened at Parkland, is they pulled the fire alarm.
Exactly. And because when you hear a fire alarm go off, you automatically assume fire time to evacuate, right?
Yeah.
But was there a code red that had a pretend pull fire alarm? No, because you're not expecting things like that to happen. And when you have adults that are responsible for hundreds of people, all of these things need to be thought out, right? Yeah. You can't just pick and choose when it's convenient for you to do a code red lockdown, right? I'm really a little bit worked up about this because we're having a conversation, and I went to the March for Our Lives rally, and I actually took my students there, and it was a phenomenal experience seeing young people have conversations, and they weren't afraid to talk, right? They weren't afraid to speak up for their own rights, but also for their own safety. And I think that these conversations need to happen because it's our kids that are at stake. But also, if you think about the demographics of the March for Our Lives rally, right, one of the biggest things that resonated with me the most was that some of the students that were talking, the African-American students that came up, some of the Black students from Chicago, right, they were saying, hey, like, Parkland, we're here for you. We're praying for you. We're standing in solidarity with you. But I also want to make clear that drive-bys happen all the time in our communities.
And my students were talking about that as well. When that happened, I think one of the most powerful moments for me is that my students and I, we were staying after school to make signs. And a student told me, like, I stopped going to church when I got shot. Because it was hard. And I'm tearing up even thinking about it. Because it's really just, it's sad that these happened. And the first time that she talked to me about it was in this shooting. But Parkland is, the people that you see and these leaders in Parkland are not people of color. And yet she was talking to us about it like it was it was normal and this is expected, and it was just so sad to see. But it was also, why aren't these stories being heard in this narrative as well?
And who is listening? Right? Who's on the receiving end of the information? Right?
Yeah.
Is the person that's responsible for deciding protocol for students living in communities where gun violence doesn't happen? Yeah. Right? Do you live in a gated community or do you live in the projects, the people that are making these decisions? Right?
Yeah. I think it's exactly like what we talked about last night when we went to the town hall. And so we went to the town hall last night with the Florida Commissioner of Education, and it was specifically targeted for teachers and students and families in communities, primarily people of color, and how these laws and these policies do not reflect what our students need. And that was something that was echoed over and over again. And it's because the people that are making these laws are not in the classroom.
Right. I completely agree. And also, the people that are executing the laws are not speaking up.
No, not at all.
I'm gonna say that one more time because I feel like y'all didn't hear that.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah. The people who are executing the laws are not being reflective of how it impacts the communities. And let me break it down for you.
Or how it impacts marginalized communities. Because they think well in how it impacts their children's school.
Right. Exactly. That's it. It's just so many thoughts going through my head right now, but a lot of the times we say, well, teachers, why are you having this conversation, right? You're just going to make the school look bad. You're just going to make the district look bad. You're just going to make this, that, and the other look bad. But if someone was to, if a student or a teacher got hurt and it was your child, or it was your mom, or it was your best friend, right? I don't care what school you go to. I don't care what your position is. I'm coming for everybody.
Yeah.
Because we have to make sure that, like you said before, the decisions that we're making them to protect our students, not our reputations.
I 100% agree. So I think we kind of are running out of time, so we should start thinking about how can we enact a solution? Because we're talking and we're passionate, but in order for this to change, we need to present solutions to our communities, to our governments. And so can you think of one solution that you think could help impact this?
Well, I think one of the most simplistic solutions is don't have a code red at a set time. Vary it up a little bit. You never know when something is going to occur. We need to be prepared for all types of situations. Not just, we're going to have one first period, second period, third period, fourth period, fifth period, right? Just to make sure. Have one during lunch. Have one at 2:20 when the bell rings. So that we can be prepared and we can protect our teachers and our students. But I feel like another solution is, and I had this conversation before, right, with you. A lot of the times when we abandon protocol, you get in trouble because you abandon the rules that were already there. It's one thing to say protocol did not work, right? That's one conversation. But when you completely abandon the system as a whole and then something bad happens, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So That's my 2 cents. What do you think?
Well, I think that we need to stop thinking about school shootings and violence just as a white man or boy coming into a school with an automatic rifle. Because that's what I think of. I think that's the narrative, is that those are the only school shootings. And that's the only time we have guns in the school. And because we have that sole narrative of gun violence in schools, we are only thinking of one solution. When necessarily that child in our school, that wasn't an automatic rifle.
Right.
And we don't know what he was going to do with it, but because our systems are only made for these major tragedies and not recognizing the violence that happens every single day in some communities, then we are not effectively protecting our children. And so I think when we're thinking about gun violence, we have to think about every time a child faces gun violence, not just those incidents that invoke tragedy and invoke these national attention, because it's clear that some instances of violence don't get national attention. And just because our students and people are ignored by the media doesn't mean that we cannot be prepared for those instances.
I completely agree. I want to know what you guys think. How can we solve these issues? How can we make our schools safe? How can we make our kids safe? How can we make our community safe? How can we make our state safe? How can we make our nation safe? How can we make our world safe? Right?
Yes.
And how can we make our minds safe?
What does that mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean? Like
mental health?
Yes. How can we protect our minds? How can we protect ourselves? How can we protect our, like you said before, our mental health? Because if you go to school and you're thinking, oh, I hope nothing happens, right? Then we need to make sure that our students are going into the classrooms and not worrying about those types of things. Because one thing that we did not address, that we still can't answer that question, why did he bring the gun to school in the first place?
Yeah, and how can we...
Did he bring the gun to school just to flex and say, I got a gun, right? Did he bring the gun to school because he's being bullied? Did he bring the gun to school because he has to walk home in an unsafe environment, in an unsafe neighborhood, and he feels like that's the only thing that can protect him because he can't go and turn to anybody else, right?
Yeah.
We got to protect our minds, right? But we also have to know that there are people that's out here advocating for us and not just saying, gun, 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 gun. My question is why?
Of course. Thank you for clarifying that, so I wasn't making fun of you.
She's not.
You're the bully. Well, on that note, thank you guys so much for tuning in today.
And please put comments. Tell us what you think.
Share.
Yes. And we will also link in at the end the article so that you can read it. So
thank you so much, guys. Have a nice day.
bye.
Bye.